Welcome to Tiny Show and Tell Us, the bonus series where you write in with your favorite science news or factoid, we read your email aloud, and then we dive deeper. I'm Sam Jones, and I'm here with my co-host, Deboki Chakravarti.
Hello. Well, last time we talked about pregnancy tests and rabbits, which are two things you wouldn't always know are connected, but they sure are.
Or they sure were. Fortunately, no longer.
Good point. Yes, good point. We also talked about the surprising brain scans of dead salmon. So lots of weird animal things going on. And a reminder for all of you listeners that if you have a story that you'd like for us to cover on Tiny Show and Tell Us, all you have to do is write us an email. You can email us at tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form linked in the episode description.
Right. And before we get into our stories today, we have two quick things we wanted to share. First, we're going to be taking a few weeks off in the beginning of 2026, but do not fear. We will be back on January 21st with a brand new episode. Second, we wanted to share a quick note that listener Leah sent us. Leah wrote, "Thanks to your Tiny Show and Tell in episode 86, I definitely flossed!" 3 exclamation points. As a heart patient, I've always known it was important to floss, but I often don't prioritize it. Thanks for explaining why it's important. Leah's referencing a Tiny Show and Tell at the end of episode 86, where I bring in a new study that looked at the connection between flossing and heart health. The takeaway was you should floss.
Yeah.
And apparently Leah took that to heart.
Yeah, lately, for anyone else who hates flossing but needs motivation, the thing that I've been telling myself when I don't want to floss is I would rather spend like a few minutes flossing than have to spend more time at my hygienist, because the times when I've been really good about flossing, my teeth cleaning appointments just like go so fast. They're just like in and out. And then like the appointments where I've been bad about it, I'm like, oh my God, I've been here forever. So if you are also like me,
flossing hesitant,
hate flossing, but you also hate the dentist, just tell yourself, if I do this for a minute now, it'll save me like 30 minutes at the hygienist later.
There you go. It's the lesser of two evils in this situation.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely.
So thanks for writing in, Leah. Deboki, do you want to get us started?
Okay, so Sam, I have a message from listener Jason who wrote, "I was listening to a Star Talk radio podcast where they featured Davis Sobel as their guest, a Pulitzer Prize nominated author known for her work in scientific storytelling. They spoke about her book, The Glass Universe, which I began reading, where she writes about the women computers, in quote, computers, hired at the Harvard Sears Tower Observatory in the late 1800s to early 1900s. These women performed calculations and star mapping that was largely the foundation for modern astronomy, and they never get the credit they deserve. It's a wonderful story about the hard, unappreciated work these women performed, and also provides fascinating context about early astronomy and how that field was advanced. This is not a plug for her book, which is great, but more just context to how I discovered the story of these human computers who helped lay the groundwork for the astronomy we know today."
Very cool.
Yes, this is awesome. And I also love this because I did a writing workshop this past year with a science writer named Liz Cruzy, who's done writing on these star plates. And I'll get into that in a little bit. This is something that I've kind of been learning more about through like stuff that she's talked about. And so I was just like excited to dive more into this. So let's start with the history because, Sam, I feel like this is our jam. We love this stuff. So in the middle of the 19th century, scientists start to figure out how they could use their observatories and exposure time and all these other photographic tools to actually basically just take pictures of the night sky on these glass photographic plates. Yeah, it's super cool. And there's a lot you could learn from these, but it's not just like knowing where the positions of these stars were. It's also that these plates produce spectra where you could tell, depending on how you process them, you could start to understand more about what stars are actually made of. And so there was a lot to do with these plates. And again, I cannot stress, there were so many of them. So these glass plates, that's part of why this book is called The Glass Universe, they needed to be processed, which meant that you needed people who could provide cheap, highly skilled labor to look at them and process them. And in The Glass Universe, the author is specifically looking at Harvard Observatory, where directors at the turn of the 20th century and also into the 1950s turned to this burgeoning labor force that was skilled, but also very cheap, which were women. So a number of these women were graduates of women's colleges, some of which had really strong astronomy programs, which I thought was really awesome. And a lot of the women who were part of this project to basically process these plates made really important contributions to the field, like Henrietta Leavitt, who was able to calculate the size of the Milky Way. Her work was super influential in astronomy. Edwin P. Hubble used it to actually establish that the Andromeda galaxy is a different galaxy from ours, and really just that there are more galaxies than the Milky Way. So,
and isn't it why, I mean, I know this is part of the point of this book and why we're talking about this and why you're talking about it, but like how many people know the name Hubble?
Right.
So many people know the name Hubble.
Yeah.
How many people know the name Henrietta Leavitt? Right. I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's another fascinating aspect to it because there's the women scientists, but there's also a lot of women who are really important to funding this work. One of them was Anna Draper. Her husband, Henry Draper, was an amateur astronomer and scientist who actually helped figure out how to take some of these pictures of the star spectra. And so she actually donated her fortune to Harvard to continue his work in a way, to basically make sure that these plates were studied. There's also a woman named Catherine Wolfe Bruce who donated to build a telescope to take pictures of the southern hemisphere. So that was another aspect that I thought was really fascinating because I think there's a lot of ways that women have had an impact on the field. And so I feel like it's just really wild to be like, yeah, it's in the science and it's also in like the foundations of making sure that people were able to do this work.
Yeah.
And then so to go back to my writing workshop buddy, Liz, she wrote this really fascinating article in National Geographic that we'll link to about some of the things that are kind of going around the plates today, because there's this huge project going on to digitize them, which is really important. Like, so there's at least like 550,000 glass plates at Harvard alone. And again, these images were taken in a number of observatories. So there's a lot of these plates going on. And they have so much important information recorded on them. And of course, we want to digitize them because we want to be able to preserve the images of these night skies that people took.
Right.
But that's not the only information on these plates. There are also annotations left by the women who were studying them. And one of the things that's kind of emerged as a challenge in archiving these plates is that to digitize them and to get the clearest image of them, they've actually had to remove those annotations. And there's just something really like, you know, understandable. Like we want to get the best image of the night sky from these plates, but there's also something about literally like erasing the work of the people who studied that just like is so...
It's so personal. It feels so personal.
Yeah. Yeah. And those annotations can be important.
Right.
And so for this article, Liz talked to an artist named Erica Blumenfeld, who was understandably like upset to hear that these annotations were being erased and wanted to see if she could preserve them in some way. So in 2019, she started a project to transfer marks from plates onto another material, but the digitizing project was still moving on. Her chances to get more images was limited. So she ended up deciding to pick out 6 plates in particular to make gold leaf prints from that she called tracing luminaries that are just the annotations. So in some ways, it's like the opposite of the digitizing of the plates. It's like just the annotations. So I just thought that was a really, really cool project. You can actually look up tracing luminaries and see the images of what she made on her website.
Oh, cool.
As well as her like writing about the project overall. I also asked Liz about these plates in general, and she pointed me to some other really great articles for anyone who wants to read more. So we'll link to those as well. There's one that's a story about the women who worked at another observatory. And then there's another story in the Smithsonian about what we can learn from these plates. So there's a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you to Liz for answering my questions because I was really excited to see what else there is to dive into.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. That's so cool. And now I'm like, I need to go and look at the gold leaf transfer.
Yeah, and definitely like check out the plates too. It's so cool to see. Like you're just like, yeah, like people just collected all of these images and it's how we learned so much about astronomy.
Yeah, also how ingenious, how inventive to think about like that be the process. I think is really fascinating.
Yeah. For sure.
Okay, so I have a tiny show and tell us from listener Susan, who wrote in and said, passion flower vines have co-evolved with Heliconius butterflies. The vines make cryogenic glycosides and other chemicals that the butterflies can tolerate /sequester/use. Some of the species have leaves with fake yellow nectaries that fool the butterflies into thinking they are eggs. Love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. The passion vine plant, generally known as the genus Passiflora, they're host to the longwing butterfly, the Heliconius. The butterfly will lay its eggs on the leaf, which hatch into caterpillars, and then they will eat away at the leaf when they're born.
Num, num, num.
Yeah, bummer for the plant. So the plant and the butterflies have been in this co-evolutionary battle where the plant has defenses, the butterfly counters the defenses, then the plant evolves different defenses. And then, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
And we actually talked about co-evolution of plants and insects in an episode in October 2024 titled Pesticides Across History and Learning from Millions of Years of Plant-Insect Warfare. Oh. So if you want to hear more stories about co-evolution, then that could be interesting because plants are creating essentially their own version of pesticides, which I think is really interesting to think about. Okay, so back to the passion vines. So most passion vine leaves and unripe fruit are toxic. They have defensive compounds called cyanogenic glucosides. It's interesting because I found that they have cyanogenic glucosides and glycosides. And essentially, these are plant compounds that will release hydrogen cyanide, which is toxic when the plant tissue is damaged.
Okay.
So this is, of course, a defense against things that will eat them, right? Like against herbivores.
Yeah.
But there's always a but with coevolution. The caterpillars can eat these toxins and sequester them into their tissues, which then makes the caterpillar and later the butterfly it turns into toxic to other animals, which is just brilliant, honestly.
Oh, sneaky.
Evolution is wild. Yeah. This is really similar to how monarch butterflies will feed on milkweed plants, which makes them toxic to predators. Then let's talk about the nectaries that Susan wrote about. So glands on the passion vine leaves called extrafloral nectaries make nectar that will attract ants and wasps that might eat the caterpillars of the Heliconius butterflies. That is another Team Wasp point. Point for Team Wasp there.
It depends on if you're like, are you on Team Butterfly or are you on Team Wasp?
I think I'm on Team Wasp for this a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So, okay, so the passion vine leaves also have bright yellow spots to trick the long-winged butterflies. So how does it trick them? The yellow spots, they look like butterfly eggs that have already been laid on the leaf. So the idea there is the butterfly would be like, let's move on, They don't want their future caterpillars to have to compete with the, quote, eggs that are already there, except there are not eggs there. They're just being tricked. So that's very smart. And it's funny because I didn't think about a plant having that. I often think about butterflies.
Right.
Having these incredible spots, like where if they open up both of their wings, it looks like eyes of a predator or, just like all of these like unbelievable adaptations. And I don't think about it often on the other side, like
for sure.
Butterflies are not the only ones tricking. They're also getting tricked.
Yep.
And then the last thing I want to mention is that passion vines also have spiky structures on their leaves called trichomes. And trichomes, it's a very general term. Like you can have different types of trichomes. But yeah, this is where things get violent. So the spikes can actually impale the caterpillars.
Oh my God.
But there's one Heliconius species called Heliconius charithonia, aka the zebra longwing butterfly, that can eat away at these trichomes. So they aren't as dangerous. So again, evolution wins, adaptation wins. And but I thought this was like a very fascinating relationship.
What a funny little battle they have going on. Like, I like the idea of being like, you know what? I hate you so much. I'm going to recruit some ants. I'm going to get some wasps in here.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to trick you and think there are already eggs on me. I'm going to, impale you with my spikes.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring in the wasps.
Yep.
Yeah. I loved this.
Yeah. Wowee. Thank you to Jason and Susan for submitting to Tiny Show and Tell Us, a bonus series from Tiny Matters created by the American Chemical Society and produced by Multitude. And again, just a quick reminder that we're going to be back with new episodes on January 21st.
We will indeed. You can send us an email to be featured in a future Tiny Show and Tell Us episode at tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form that's linked in the episode description. We will see you in 2026.